Hi, all the viewers and listeners of the video interviews of Lead Compliance and Ethics Conference 2025. This is another video with an amazing guest in the series of this interview. We have today Adrian Pay, co-founder and director of Dynamic GRC. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, and good morning, Adriana.
Yeah, good morning to you, to London, actually. So I want to start by giving your official bio, and then we'll kick off with questions. We will also discuss your exciting topic for the conference, which is how to visualize compliance. I think we all want to impress whomever we report to, and most importantly, we want to impact. So, and this is also the red thread of the conference: how to make business compliance, ethics, and sustainability impactful. Okay, so Adrian's compliance career is very extensive, and it already started in 1996 with Robert Fleming, which used to be an asset manager and merchant bank headquartered in London. So you undertook compliance investigations and monitoring back then. This is how you started with. And you worked extensively worldwide. I'm impressed. So Hong Kong, Tokyo, you worked on regulatory IT projects and investigations. And then you co-founded Latin Zero, which was an IT company focusing on trading and risk system for investment managers, mostly in New York, Boston, London, Paris, and Singapore. So you found yourself in Singapore when you founded your latest company, Dynamic GRC. So this company developed a platform to address many of compliance challenges. I'm guessing regulatory compliance, and you mostly work with financial services companies. So you have first-hand experience, which is great. Um, and yet, with all the technology and the technical knowledge and skills that you have, it's amazing to me that I found over again, I find that compliance professionals and leaders and thought leaders actually, such as yourself, are focused primarily on the culture, right? And how to impact. This is really confirming how much the organizational culture is important. So you're looking to solve compliance challenges by using technologies, and we want to learn from you how to use interactive visualizations. So with this, I want to leave the screen to you to tell us more or something else about your journey, professional journey that is not part of your official bio.
Wow, that's a tough question actually, and I guess I have to think back to my time at university. I actually chose to study social policy and administration in a small city called Exeter in England, and the reason I did that is actually because I cared. I cared about our society, and I was thinking there must be a better way to run government, but not just government, because welfare doesn't just come from government. It comes from informal institutions, it comes from charities, it just comes from how we act in our every day-to-day lives. And a lot of that, of course, comes back to culture. I didn't know that at the time, but so much of what we do, do we trust our neighbors? Do we say good morning to them? Do we lock our front doors? Do kids kind of run between houses playing because it's one big family? Or are we like a closed society? So that kind of that background in social policy and administration kind of highlighted, sorry, my English isn't always perfect, highlighted to me that government definitely has a role, but it's only part of, if a culture is positive, government can step back. You can't force a culture but through government intervention. You can sponsor maybe, but you can't force. And that links back, I think, a lot to, in companies and compliance. We always look at how can we get companies to act more responsibly and to implement.
So what was the main lesson that you learned from this experience?
There
About
were
the culture.
several lessons. The first one, and you might want to cut this actually, is that politicians want to get re-elected. And so, although it's very clear, and strangely enough, for me, the gold standard in terms of government
Mhm.
is Singapore, because it's a government that's created an amazing society, which is very integrated, very positive, very trusting, and law abiding. And it just goes to show what a government can achieve. Of course, there are other examples where government's also quite interventionist, where it hasn't worked well.
Mhm.
So the first time I visited Singapore, I actually took the MRT, which is their subway
Mhm.
system, around the whole island.
Mhm.
And I went to the housing projects. And they were like private housing estates. You know, there were flowers everywhere. There were no burnt out cars. There was no graffiti. There was no crime. And it
Mhm.
was just
Mhm.
amazing what they were able to achieve. And interestingly, the founder of modern Singapore, a person called Lee Kuan Yew, he'd actually spent time studying in the UK at Cambridge University, and he'd seen how government housing projects in the UK were a disaster. So he actually took his experiences in the UK back to
Mhm.
Singapore. And what he did differently was he made sure that the government had housing projects or apartment blocks built by private developers, but sold at a great discount to the population. And that way people are able to be true stakeholders in their society.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when they owned
Mhm.
their own apartment,
Oh,
they
that's
didn't do
interesting.
graffiti.
Okay,
Exactly. And you
that's
also have,
interesting.
as
Oh.
a society, you also have
Mhm.
leverage over them. Because
Mhm.
if they did something wrong, you know, they set fire to a car, they've got an asset they can lose. They don't want to lose that asset because
Hmm.
they're invested in their society.
Oh, that's so interesting. So the first thing that I'm thinking now is that in Slovenia we also have very high percentage of owned homes,
Hmm.
right? So and we also have very low levels of crime. But I never connected the two. That's interesting. So maybe that's one comment to confirm what you just
Hmm.
said. And second question perhaps is how can you bring this experience and this insight into an organization that is a company? What does it say?
Well,
Can you use the same
that's
principles?
an amazing question, and I'll tell you why. Because intelligent people, well, they talk to each other. When people talk to each other, they often come up with ideas that they didn't have before they started talking. So I hadn't really thought of this directly, the question you just asked.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I think it's about stakeholders. Employees are not actually employees. They should
mm-hmm.
have a stake in your organization,
Amazing.
be
Mm-hmm,
it a government, be it a charity, a
mm-hmm,
religious
mm-hmm,
organization,
mm-hmm,
or a commercial organization. And many of the problems we
mm-hmm,
have in the
mm-hmm,
modern industrialized societies, there's
mm-hmm.
a lack of ownership. So
Right?
too
Yeah,
many
yeah.
times, even senior management
Hmm.
in organizations are not
Mm-hmm,
acting in an honest or
mm-hmm,
ethical way because
mm-hmm,
they're looking at the paycheck or the
mm-hmm,
bonus,
mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm,
they're not motivated to do
mm-hmm.
a good job because they're not true stakeholders.
Yes.
And I did actually observe this in financial services when I went to Scotland, Edinburgh. And there's a particular company there, which is an investment management firm, but it's a partnership.
Mm-hmm,
And although it's a huge business, because it's a partnership, the partners take individual interest
mm-hmm,
in the business and operating in an honest and ethical way, because when they become a partner, they are
mm-hmm.
there until they retire.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So they always want to grow that business because it's their legacy and it's their retirement fund.
So I guess we found not necessarily 100% and always, but another leverage to encourage ethical behavior. So to increase a level of ownership, maybe really direct ownership through capital, but maybe employees can hold a stake in other ways as well, right? So we are now into maybe HR or organizational culture territory, but I think it's interesting how we got to this insight through talking about housing, right? Housing and crime levels. But
Exactly.
okay, so let's move back to the original questions. But I love this part. I love this part, and I don't think we'll cut it, Adrian. um, okay, so what what is the recent real case study that you did? Because I read you on LinkedIn because you generously share your knowledge and you really go deep into real cases, which are we are flooded with real life cases. I'm talking about various scandals. You're mostly focused on financial industry, but not necessarily. I know you look at other cases as well. So can you teach us something about which was the last real case study that you did and few highlights from it?
Absolutely. I think probably the most relevant one is we've been working for several years now with a consulting firm, a compliance consulting firm in Jersey, which is in the Channel Islands, just off the coast of France. And it's a huge financial center. So they do a lot of offshore finance there. Historically, there was a perception perhaps that they were a high money laundering risk. I have to say that having worked closely in both Jersey and Guernsey, which are the two Channel Islands, they are actually very well regulated because they know that everyone's looking at them and they're under the regulatory microscope. So working with the consulting firm in Jersey, we actually invented or prepared a cultural assessment for firms. And what was particularly interesting about this is that people have different roles in anti-money laundering. So they might be a board director, they might work in the compliance team, they might actually have an anti-money laundering role. For example, they undertake transaction monitoring, they do know your customer, or they might be just general employees. So people have different roles. So what we did was we created questionnaires for people in different roles. And the answers to the questions have risk scores. So by so I'm getting tongue-tied. By classifying the different answers, you can actually then visualize the responses. So quite an interesting area was training. So just asking the general employees, have you received specific training on terrorist financing? Yes, no, was this in the last 12 months? Was it relevant to your role? Was it informative? And importantly, was it relevant to your industry? Now, one of the things we often find is people, when they do compliance training as an organization, they tend to just go ahead and say, oh, look, everyone's going to have an hour a year. And so they find the cheapest or the best value generic anti-money laundering training, and then it checks a box. Now, that's not a good approach, of course, because what firms should be doing is saying, well, what sector do we work in? If it's online gaming, then you should have training relevant to online gaming. If you're a private bank, the training you need is very different to doing consumer finance, which might be different to other areas. So again, the training should be relevant to your industry. It should also be relevant to your jurisdiction. So there's loads of online training, perhaps, which is US specific, but it doesn't really work so well in Slovenia, in Albania, or some other country. So you need to have not just training relevant to your jurisdiction, but ideally picking out cases which are relevant to your jurisdiction. So there might be AML cases in Croatia or Serbia, which people want to hear about and can be used to illustrate. You don't really want to hear about Monzo Bank in the UK or Wells Fargo in the US. You might as well be talking about Martians. It's just not relevant. So having training which is relevant to your jurisdiction uses up-to-date examples, ideally from your jurisdiction, relevant to your industry, and also to your specific job. These are all very important. So by using our questionnaires, we're able to draw out this information. And this is where it gets more kind of relevant. We can then visualize it because we can have charts and graphs showing in particular areas of your business, people aren't aware of terrorist financing. Yes, they have had generic anti-money laundering training, but 72% of them didn't think it was relevant to their job. And 84% didn't think that it had any practical examples.
Can you explain why is it important to visualize whatever part of compliance program?
Absolutely. If we take the example of training, just because it's quite neatly contained in the anti-money laundering space, if I were to do a report saying Sorry, there's a helicopter overhead. Can you? It's really loud for me. Let's
It's
just.
cool. Very
Okay,
cool.
it's live.
It looks like you are like in some kind of aviation center.
Right, the helicopter's gone now. Right. If we
Cool.
just take the area of anti-money laundering because it's neatly contained,
Mhm,
if I were to do a report on training and
mhm,
I said, oh, lots of people said that they weren't trained, lots of people said this, this, and this, it doesn't really mean anything because it's
mhm,
just anecdotal.
mhm,
So it's important to quantify. If I actually have the statistics, but then I write a report saying, oh, 82.4% of respondents said whatever, it's just dry. But if you show people a pie chart and you show 84%, it actually means something. It's not just a number because 84%, 73%, 62% are just
mhm,
numbers.
mhm.
They're two digits. If you show a
Yeah.
pie chart with a nice
So you
wedge,
can see it. So you can see
yes.
what 87% means, right?
So in terms of a
Mhm,
snapshot, and this might kind of tie in with questions you might have later, but if you see a snapshot, it means something, but it doesn't give you an indication of the
mhm,
direction of travel because 82%, is that good or bad? I don't know. But if I say, oh, a year ago, 97% of people didn't
mhm.
know or weren't satisfied,
Okay.
and I can show 97% dissatisfied
Okay.
going down to 82, that direction of
It's
travel
good.
means something.
Mm,
Well, it's better.
mhm,
Or you might want to look at it conversely and say only 8% of people did know, and now suddenly 17% of people know. So you can use that information,
mhm,
the graphical representation,
mhm.
to actually take action.
Yeah.
So you might say, right, people didn't know about terrorist financing. Let's give them a training course.
Mhm,
Now we need to do something quickly, so we'll do something online,
mhm,
and then we're actually going to have a round table with some of our colleagues who are actually on the ground to find out
mhm,
what's
mhm,
relevant to them,
mhm.
what they need to be finding out. So we can actually then give them more detailed anti-terrorist training.
There are companies that do that, that collect this feedback and data and present it even, but there are many that don't do it. You just decide you are not going to ask people what they thought about the survey. So why do it? What talks in favor of, measuring and visualization? Why is this important?
That's a good question. Now, the reality is that the world's greatest and most successful companies are brutal about analyzing data and being
Mhm,
self-critical. So Amazon didn't become probably the biggest retailer in the world by being complacent. They want to know. They've got all sorts of data about all sorts of things, not just their
mhm.
consumers, but about their organization, how it operates. Now, in their context, I guess it's more
Sorry,
around
that's very
logistics.
good point. Let me get a pen. It's about, because we are back to creating impactful compliance program, right?
Hmm,
For the impact. Yeah, sorry,
hmm.
I interrupted.
No, not at all. Please continue interrupting. Um, so the most outstanding organizations in any environment are the ones that are the most self-critical and the most paranoid. So read a great book by a guy, I think it's Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel, and the book was called Only the Paranoid Survive. I got the book, I read it, it was a disappointment, but it was a great title. But it made me realize that people who are healthily paranoid about their performance improve. And that can be in personal relationships, it can be in professional conduct, it can be in education, in sporting ability, or the sports we do, our lifestyle. People who are complacent don't thrive and don't live fulfilling lives. People are always looking at how can I do better?
And I'm asking this question because, it's a great argument for everyone to use when they are denied resources to do this kind of research and data collection and data analyzing, right? Because it takes a lot of resources, not just financial resources, but it's also time consuming. So it's good argument to use and say, this way we're going to eventually be using less resources because our compliance program is going to be more effective and we're going to reach our goals more successfully, right? Because if you're not, what you're saying is you have to monitor your progress. And how else are you going to do if you don't have data and analyze it and present it, right? It just means you don't have objectives, right? You don't have purpose. You don't have like a goal that you want to achieve. And then if you don't have a goal, then how to be successful? So yeah, I agree. Great. All right. So is there a 3 to 5 steps how to do the compliance visualization well?
That's a tricky question because
Give us a recipe. We want a recipe.
automatically, and I've come across this with many clients, the natural thing to do is go to the board of directors and say, what information would you like? Now, unfortunately, this is not really a great approach because they don't actually know what they want. Because
yeah, you have to tell them what they want.
Well, suggest, give them an example.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because nobody likes to be told. So instead of asking them, because they're the chief finance officer, the chief head of HR, the chief operations officer, CTO, etc., they all have expertise in a particular area, I hope. Now, as compliance experts, what we should be doing is preparing kind of information that we think they should be looking at, but then they need to have some ownership of that or a sense of ownership. So we can give them, this is what we think would be helpful for you for these reasons. But is there anything else that you would like? Is there some way we can present this in a better way? Do you need more information, different information, etc.? So giving them the information that we think they should have and then getting their feedback and not just doing this as a one-off exercise, but to continually kind of self-improve. And certainly on an annual basis, the board should be asked, and it should actually be a line item in the board meeting notes. Is everyone happy with the information they're getting regarding compliance, financial crime, sanctions, environmental standards, HR, etc.?
So you're going to talk about all this and more, and visualize for everyone how to do it, right? How to use all the data, how to get all the data, which is relevant, and how you are doing it in your session at Lead Compliance and Ethics Conference in October. So I'm looking very much forward to it, Adrian. And yeah, hopefully we talk to you soon.
Adriana, thank you very much. That's been certainly quite an interesting journey. And it's really helped me think of applications for visualizations that maybe I hadn't been aware of before we started this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Adrian. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day.